Alex Newman, welcome back to the Pete Santilli Show. We were talking before we came on, and I said that I wanted to get a progress report from you. You know, the United States of America for a certain period of time during the Biden administration, our strength on the global stage obviously waned. There was no doubt about it. We did not have the respect per se as a. Do we call ourselves a superpower? We have been a superpower economically, but of course, it's not good to be a superpower as a military force per se. But internationally, we had not had the same level of respect that I've known the United States to have, for my lifetime. But with the change in the transition to the Trump administration within a short period of time, Alex. First of all, welcome back. Second of all, you have to admit that it was pretty remarkable to see all of those EU leaders in the same room at the same time with President Donald J. Trump. Don't you agree?
It was fascinating, yeah. And thanks for having me, Pete. Great to be here. That was a pretty iconic picture there with all these European leaders sitting around the desk there at the Oval Office. But no, generally speaking, I've been pleased with what Trump is doing on trying to bring about peace in different parts of the world. I think he played a big role in settling down what was going on between India and Pakistan. Actually, that happened right before I went to India, so I was glad to see that tamped down before it went more out of control. Just last week, they announced a peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I was just in Azerbaijan about 8 months ago. And the Islamo-Marxist regime there is nasty. They've been brutal to the ancient Christian nation of Armenia, the oldest Christian nation in the world, the first nation to come to Christ. And so that was a big deal. Whether we can trust them to live up to their end of the bargain, I think, remains to be seen. But, progress. Now it's the Armenian government that's persecuting the Armenian Christians, surprise, backed by the European Union. And unfortunately, U.S. aid was encouraging a lot of that for a long time. But what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, I'm very concerned. It does look like Trump is trying his hardest to bring peace to that conflict. But we also see Putin wanting to escalate. We see Zelensky wanting to escalate. And I think it's because they're doing the bidding of their globalist puppet masters who understand that a third world war, massive killing, would be a boon to these efforts to globalize government. And we're seeing that on the economic front, too. Counterintuitively, Trump is trying to rein in some of the undermining of the U.S. economy, and he's trying to do bilateral deals, instead of the multilateral regional government kind of deals that we've seen modeled on the European Union. But again, counterintuitively, we're seeing a lot of these regional governments that are emerging kind of grow closer together in response to what Trump is doing, which I think is unfortunate. But
do you agree as we get closer to peace, which is a great thing, because as they negotiate their way through this, any advancement forward and any cooperation and communication, that's a good thing, advancing towards peace. But I feel right now, especially if somebody were to make a mistake, we're edging even closer, possibly, as we are to peace, to possible world war. It could amount to that if somebody makes a wrong move and things fall out. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think they want a world war, Pete. I think there's an effort to expand one of these conflicts, whether it's the Middle East or Ukraine, Russia, or China and Taiwan, or even North and South Korea. I think there is a globalist desire to see a third world war. And I mean, the reasons why are very obvious. War has been the most important catalyst for globalism that mankind has ever seen. And the globalists themselves have identified this. If you go back to early 1960s, when the State Department commissioned the report, A World Effectively Controlled by the United Nations, what he said was it would take 200 years to get to global government just with organic trends. He said what could accelerate that process was war or the threat of war. And obviously that's exactly what they noticed after World War I. Right? They tried to create the League of Nations. They created a whole bunch of international institutions that were supposed to kind of grow until they became global government. The only reason that didn't work is because the U.S. Senate kept us out. But then in the aftermath of World War II, They created the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the European Coal and Steel Community, which eventually morphed into the European superstate that we call the European Union today. So almost all the big advances in globalism have come in the aftermath of major wars. And the globalists understand that. So if they want to move us from where we're at now to a one-world system controlled by the United Nations and the powers behind the United Nations, well, they all understand that war is the fastest way to do that. And here comes Trump saying, no, we ought to stop the wars. We ought to have peace. Well, that doesn't work very well with that plan. So,
no, a lot of money to be made, obviously, and armament, the defense industrial, complex, the military-industrial complex gains from that. But killing a lot of people is it's certainly more effective to whip something up in a petri dish these days. Those weapons escaping from the Wuhan laboratory seems like they can kill a whole heck of a lot and psyop them into compliance, of course, as we saw through COVID. But do you think that the old, stale methods of battle lines being drawn and boundaries being reconfigured, that's something that they desire more so than a technocratic enslavement and a biological type of release?
Well, I think we might see multiple of these things at the same time, right? The World Economic Forum started talking about a polycrisis back in 2023. And I had started talking about a polycrisis the year before. I first heard the term from the great Patrick Wood. And it seems like that's what they're going for now, right? And the United Nations started preparing for this years ago. I actually broke the story. I had a policy brief by the Secretary General of the UN where he talked about how the United Nations, and in particular the Secretary General, needed to be the primary decision-making authority in the event of global crises or international emergencies. And they gave a whole bunch of different examples. It could be climate, it could be environment, it could be nuclear, it could be war, it could be an economic crisis, it could be a pandemic, it could be a black swan event, it could be something going on in space, it could be anything, basically. And he said in this that all stakeholders, the governments, businesses, everything, would have to defer to the primary decision-making authority of the UN and its multilateral agencies. So I think that's what they're going for. I think we will see, if we're not careful here, a polycrisis where we're dealing with multiple crises at the same time. And maybe it'll be a public health crisis, maybe some new virus, some new release from some laboratory, combined with a third world war, maybe combined with an economic collapse, the destruction of the dollar, et cetera. And then you merge all those into one where people are just at their wits' end. The grocery stores don't have much on the shelves. And, people freak out and say, okay, whatever it takes. Central bank digital currency, fine. Digital ID, fine. Global controls over the internet, whatever it takes, right? So I think that's what they're going for. I hope Trump can try to head some of this off at the pass. But, unfortunately, we saw how effective it was when they did COVID in 2020. So, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, Pete.
I was just thinking, you're obviously very big on education, and we'll talk about the restructuring of our education system. Good things there, of course. But, one thing that is, I believe the public, even internationally, they need to be educated on, are these methods by which these globalists and these power structures take down any threat to their hegemony, like the Cloward-Piven strategy. I mean, these are very well-known, very effective methods, and they're happening, right? I mean, we're immersed in Cloward-Piven. Most people don't even know it. Just by educating them on these various methods, the Hegelian dialectic. If the public is aware that this is being done to them, I think we can be a little bit more resistant, if not protect ourselves from it. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why it's so critical for people to take this information and share it with everybody, right? Don't just sit there and stare at your TV and go get mad and write something on Facebook. Talk to the people at your church. Talk to your neighbors. Make sure that you're using every avenue at your disposal. And one of the things that's really effective is to really go for the opinion molders in your community. Talk to the local radio host. Talk to the local business leaders. Talk to the local newspaper editors. Talk to your local political leaders. Go to the Republican Party meeting for your county, right? That's where the influential decision makers of a community meet. And then from there, they can take that information to the people that they influence. And if we can get the word out about what these evil megalomaniacs are doing before they do it, it becomes much, much more difficult for them to get their way, right? They need the element of surprise, they need fear, and they need ignorance to be able to advance this sinister agenda. The more we can cut those off at the pass, the better off we'll be.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know, I just recently went through, I'm going to share this with you, I went through a little research project, and I was thinking to myself as far as the, electronic voting machines and putting the word out or contacting, let's say, all the election officials. And I did some research to find out, who are they? How many of them are they? Who do we need to contact? Can we send out, a blast to social media or email and say, hey, everybody, we've got a way to lock down your election system from outside foreign intrusion or any hacking? And what I got and found was that it's so decentralized. It's very, very difficult. It's thousands of people. And I'm thinking to myself, that's how they've protected their crimes. And then they can carve out, an electoral win through election fraud. I said, we need to do the same thing with governance. Become totally decentralized, rather than having 500 or so people lording over, 350 million of us. Why not put so much more strength in 3,133 counties and operate that way to where you just can't control and decentralize. You can't control us in a centralized fashion. We need a shift. We need to build our system like their criminal election fraud cabal.
And that was the idea of the founding fathers, right? People know about the different branches of the government. Yes, they wanted to distribute power horizontally across the executive, legislative, and judicial branch, but there was a vertical separation of power. The Supreme Court has referred to it as the doctrine of dual sovereignty, where you have a federal government that's sovereign, but you have state governments that are sovereign, and they're both sovereign at the same time. And each has its own sphere of authority. Basically, the Constitution gives the federal government its sphere of authority. Article 1, Section 8 lists most of those powers, which, by the way, just a fraction of what the federal government does today is actually authorized by that. And all the rest of the powers are reserved to the states. And then, of course, within a state, most states have something in their Constitution about a lot of powers being at the local level, at the county level. And nowhere is that more true than with the county sheriff. The county sheriff, of course, is the chief law enforcement officer of a county. So we've been working a lot with sheriffs. One of the projects that I work on is the Law Enforcement Intelligence Brief. It's a project of the Law Enforcement Charitable Foundation, and that goes out to every police chief and sheriff in the country. We're sending them the information that they need to be able to make good decisions, to know what's going on across the country. The FBI has essentially become useless when it comes to sharing useful information with local authorities and county sheriffs. Mostly, at least until recently, they were mostly just sending out SPLC propaganda, garbage, which everybody in law enforcement knows is garbage. And so we're trying to fill that gap there. But yeah, we need sheriffs who understand their authority, who understand their responsibility to protect the rights and the property and the lives of citizens. And it really is one very good way of holding back the tyrants. And we saw it so clearly during COVID, Pete. Here where I live, we had virtually normal life throughout most of the COVID scam. We didn't have any city mandates. We didn't have any county, nothing really from the state. I think they shut down our beaches for one day and everybody went to the beach, and that was the end of that. And that wasn't true even across all of Florida. Some of the liberal counties were just going totally crazy, arresting pastors, shutting down churches, things like this. But if you have good people in your local, your county, and your state government, you can hold back a lot of the evil that historically has come out of the federal government. We saw that with even the vaccine mandates, right? When Biden used OSHA to send out those mandates on the vaccination for employers, our governor, I'm very thankful for him, he called a special session of the legislature, and they passed a law saying anybody that fired an employee for not taking the injection would have a fine 10 times larger than whatever OSHA was going to do. And guess what? A lot of people who otherwise would have been fired didn't get fired. So state and local and county government can do a lot to hold back the tide of tyranny if the people involved understand their roles and their responsibilities and their authorities.
Just everything you were talking about, I just had a film reel just playing as we've seen the Obama administration and the Biden administration, that incremental destruction of the United States of America, offshoring our financial wealth. And then you think of the Ukraine as their piggy bank, money laundering, piggy bank out there. And then, of course, Afghanistan was so much more than just a a failure shutting down the war. We literally handed China, natural resources wealth. There's trillions of dollars in critical minerals that we just let them have. Do you think that Obama-Biden benefited the global Islamic terrorists in the Middle East more so, or do you think China? Where do you think the power and the money shifted through those two regimes?
Well, it was both, obviously, and it wasn't just the Islamists and the Chinese communists. They were helping the Latin American communists, right? You look at the criminal terrorist network in Latin America, the Foro de Sao Paulo. I think I'm one of the only journalists in America who's been exposing this. This is a network that was set up by Fidel Castro, by the wannabe Marxist dictator of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, by the mass-murdering Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and, of course, by the FARC, the mass-murdering narco-terrorists in Colombia. Came together and basically decided they were going to, in their words, 1997 minutes, they were going to regain in Latin America what had been lost in Eastern Europe, at least ostensibly, and that was communist slavery. And during the Obama regime, Obama and George Soros and the State Department, they were funneling as much help to this criminal terrorist communist network as they possibly could. And it's not because of ignorance. The Central Intelligence Agency knows all about this network of subversives. The U.S. Diplomats down there know all about this subversive network. But they were deliberately helping them. They were deliberately helping the Communist Chinese. In fact, Barack Obama, for the first time in history, brought Communist Chinese soldiers to American soil to be trained by our troops, right? He shut down huge parts of our economy so that our factories and our jobs and our wealth production capabilities would be shifted over to Communist China under the guise of saving us from the fake crisis of global warming. And, of course, Islamic terror, never had a better friend than Barack Obama. This regime was literally arming al-Qaeda and the people who went on to become ISIS by deliberate policy.
Yes.
We've got the 2012 Defense Intelligence Agency memo that says the U.S. government and its allies knew that the revolution in Syria was supported by al-Qaeda. They were supporting it anyway, and that their eventual goal was the establishment of what they called in this DIA memo and a Salafist principality in eastern Syria. What eventually came to be known as the Islamic State. They did the same thing in Libya. They did the same thing all over the world. And so what we have here is treasonous actors within the U.S. government using our economic power, our military power, our diplomatic power to build up actual enemies that they hope one day will destroy the United States of America. And if that's not treason, I don't know what is.
No, exactly. And in the remaining moments that we have here, I do believe we're going to enter into, because they would not allow D&I Gabbard and CIA and Chuck Grassley declassifying all those documents and doing it publicly. The administration would have to say, you get the stuff out and we will prosecute. It would be embarrassing to show that much criminality and not bring them to justice. That would be suicidal, bureaucratically, politically suicidal. I believe we're going to enter into a period where we're going to see some justice and accountability. Whether or not they're prosecuted, can you imagine those forces against each other in lawfare? The best attorneys on the on the private side and government attorneys. It's going to be epic here in the coming months. The crimes, and I want you to speak to this. We're not attorneys, but we can speak to the common sense reality that if you perpetrate treason, there is no immunity for such a thing. There's nothing that shall protect the president of the United States and have him immune in his capacity as president for overthrowing the United States of America. That's my common sense approach to it. Do you think they did all this stuff? They built walls of immunity around themselves in the bureaucracy, thinking they could get away with it?
No question about it, Pete. They not only planned to get away with it, they planned to totally collapse not just the United States of America, but all of what used to be called Christendom or the free world, Western civilization.
Yes.
They laid the groundwork for that. And I think they were hoping with their sponsors, the evildoers, the deep staters, to rule over the ashes, very much like communist Chinese officials rule over their slave population in communist China, just at a global level. So, no, these people are wicked to the core. These are absolutely crimes being perpetrated against the American people, including the crime of treason. And I hope we will see prosecutions of the high-level people, right? I don't want to just see some lower-level minions fall on their swords and we can all pat ourselves on the back and say, yay, we got justice. No. The highest levels need to be prosecuted, or they'll do it again, no question.
Absolutely. And I appreciate all the work that you do, holding the highest levels accountable through, transparency, of course, and exposing them in the work that you do. I really, really appreciate you coming on as well. We're honored to have you on. Alex Newman, give everybody marching orders. Where do we need to go? How do we support you? Liberty Sentinel Media. Give out the links where we can find your work.
Well, thank you so much, Pete. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. So my website, libertysentinel.org. People can sign up there. We have a free newsletter. People can just put their email in there. We'll never sell it. And it is some of the most important information we find every week that people need to keep themselves healthy and free and all the rest of it. I encourage people to sign up for the New American Magazine. If you're not yet a subscriber to the print magazine, it's the best source of intelligence, the best magazine in the world without any close second. People can also get the free daily headlines there at thenewamerican.com. And I would encourage people to get your kids out of the government schools. My newest book is Indoctrinating Our Children to Death.
Yes.
It's been endorsed by our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and General Michael Flynn, and all kinds of great Americans, Kirk Cameron. And once you make the right decision to pull your kids out of the brainwash camps, I've got my children in Classical Conversations. It's a great program. I serve on the board of Freedom Project Academy. There's all kinds of options out there for people who want their children to get a real education that will honor God, that will teach truth, that will teach how to think and reasoning. So I would encourage people to look into that. It's one of the most important things you can do, not just for your children, but for your church, for your family, for your community, and for your country. So thanks, as always, Pete, for having me on the program.
Thank you.
I do hope people will get involved, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You never know. President Trump, his administration, people within the administration, listen, I want you to send a message, just a quick one. Ask if we can have President Trump sign an executive order extending the 24-hour day to, 3 or 4 extra hours. How do you do what you do in 24 hours each and every day? Sleep, stay nourished. How do you do it? Alex, I don't know how you do it. It's amazing.
Well, I'm blessed, Pete, with an incredible staff, as you are, and also an incredible family. So that certainly helps.
Yes, and you're looking good. Stay strong. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you.